Welcome. My name is Penelope Chatterton. Welcome to Awaken the Dream. My friends, this is the third time back since our very strange dark year where we weren't going anywhere. And I'm glad to be back, and Tim Riley is back, a renewed person, and I'm grateful to be doing a show on the nature of spiritual discernment today by, of course, Joel Goldsmith. This is very interesting because I'm very uplifted by understanding the gem that is within us all and what we have to face here in the human plane. And quite frankly, Joel says it so well, the human plane was created by our minds. Now take that in. Our minds, our human minds took in this plane and we created good, evil, sin, death, go for disease, go for greed, go for who's got more than somebody else. All of those lovely attributes are part of the human scene, the mortal existence that we have. So let's just be sure we start this program knowing that's what we face. So Joel tries to help us with this bud that is within all of us. It's called discernment. It's called the Christ. It's called the gift of God that sees only the Son of God everywhere. The principles, my friends, are so simple, and the journey is not the easiest. It's like for centuries, he tells us this hidden Christ, centuries, take that in. This hidden Christ has been buried. This planet, this universe has been around for a while, and we've all been romping in this human plane, which looks for the best and the worst in people. So that's called appearances. No matter what it is, the best is still an appearance. Having success is an appearance. Being in jail is an appearance. So what Joel is trying to help us with the power or the nature of spiritual discernment is, what do we do with it? So what we do with it is we take an active measure, we take an activity within our consciousness. Now we all have a consciousness, okay, you got that? We all are in this together. We're all in a sonship. So we have an activity, a conscious attempt to pull on that gem within us and pull it up and envision what's really going on out there. So what I love about Joel is he brought up this group that he was giving this lecture to, and he was looking out at his audience and he says, you know, you're good or you're bad or you're old and you're young and you're not well and you are. And he was comical about it. He said, you know, I see all of that out there, but I know that what I'm seeing is only one thing. My son, who is the child of God. And God will just help you with that with grace. If Joel, like with our families, let's take your personal families. Now, what can push buttons more than your personal families? We're judgment galore. We have histories with them. We see the good and the bad. We see the struggles. So this is an interesting thing to think about. Yes, if you ever want to really get a good picture of what's going on, look at your own personal families, your mom and your dad, your brother, your sister, your kids. They all strike something within you that definitely calls on appearance, judgment. Because why not? You know them really well. You're going to live and die probably together, and you may all go out together, who knows? But you'll always be looking to family for that melding together of love. So when you look at that, just take that as an example of things that need to transform. If, for instance, you're looking at your kid and it's not looking so good, or whatever is not positive, you say, speak, Lord, your servant heareth. I don't know what to do with this. You know, I don't know what to pray about it. I don't know what to think about it. I need your help. And with that, there's a liberation with that. There's a freedom in that expression. There is grace. Grace is something that is within us all to share. Now that is that power of discernment within you. You have it, my friends. I have to tell you. The punchline is every soul has the power of discernment. This activity within the soul is there. It's a gift. We've all got it. You can't ignore it, because Joel says something interesting. Think of all the phases you've gone through. You've been married. You've been divorced. You've gotten a better job. You've been fired. You want to be famous with a show. You want to, you don't want to take the trash out. Whatever it is, we have all of these ways of this bud trying to come out. So yes, marriage might have felt like, I'm expressing myself. This is exactly where my power of discernment wanted to go. And maybe that didn't work out. And then we go to some other phase of things that surface where we think, aha. And you know what that is? That's that gem in you. That's that pulse in you looking to come out. Now think of that. Centuries have been hidden. The Christ has been hidden with you for centuries. So give yourself a break if you're feeling like I'm a late bloomer. It's trying to come out in the weirdest forms. I want to be famous. I want to marry Mr. King. I want to rule the world. I want to be president. I mean, think of all the things where we are trying, our power of discernment, our who we are is trying to express itself. All right, so obviously the punchline is those fail. Or they fade. They don't hold up the way we thought. And actually what's interesting is one wonderful expression leads to another expression. So none of them are lost. They're all good. It's you trying to find yourself. So you go through phases, and they're all good, and one will actually feed the next one, and that's even better, and then that will feed the next one, and before you know it, you find that you have to call on God for everything. You give all this judgment up, all of this good and bad, and I mean the good and the bad. It's called evil. The world, the universe was created good. That's the bottom line. God made this world and He made the universe good. There's no question about that. Now, if you look around, as Joel will say, the human plane doesn't look that way. I mean, we have to be honest. We look around and we don't see that. We don't see Christ ruling this world. No, not yet. But we're on a path because we have to grow. And we do grow because we have no choice. God didn't just throw us in here and say, hey, go for it, figure it out for yourself. He's there every inch of the way, always knocking on your consciousness saying, I'm here. I'll help you with everything. But this is the punchline again. When you're confused, when you're lost, when one of your kids is driving you nuts, you really need to surrender and say, God, I can't do this. Help me with perception. And guess what? Giving grace is liberating. It is freedom. Think about that. You want to be free. You want an attitude of peace within you. And guess what? What comes back with God's perception is peace. And that attitude, you need to practice that attitude. Practice. Joel loves that word. So, practice, practice, practice. Every minute of every day and every night, you're on call to practice, to see, to perceive the child of God in another. And God will say, I see the Son of God in everyone, because everyone was created by God and everyone is good. Now, there are interesting things in the Bible that talk about law, God being law, the law of God. Scripture, Joel thinks, has steered us a little wrong, because then we say law means we have to evaluate. Like the 9 out of the 10 commandments, Joel says Jesus got rid of those, because those only improve the human plane. It's love thy neighbor as thyself. You don't need all that other rules for how to live in the human plane. So that is an important thing to remember. It's so simple, it gets by us. And yet, it's like bait for a fish. It's such a lure for us to say, gosh, I want to walk on water. I want to be at peace. I want the heavenly riches. I want to be at peace, spiritually at peace here in this ridiculous plane called humanhood. And you can have it because it is yours to have. Now, Joel calls this path for us who need something to feel better about because we don't always do it right. He calls this the middle path for Infinite Way students. The middle path means we agree and we know we're not fully Christed like Jesus or those seers that were with Jesus. As a matter of fact, those seers, he took his disciples to the Mount of Transfiguration, and there they were. They were still with us. So once you get your Christhood, your immortality is the name of the game. You are immortal. You never began. You will never end. And so the middle path gives us a little pat on the back saying, do the best you can, because you're not there yet. Be humble. Don't pretend that the Christ in you is fully in bloom. If it were, this whole planet would be ruled by God, and it would be peaceful and loving, and there wouldn't be all this stuff going on. So to me, it says we got work to do, and I do notice so many wonderful spiritual practices are raising and coming out of this, not only dark last year, but just they're growing after these centuries of being hidden. People are reaching out. People are growing and changing and finding ways to express their spirituality with folks who are on the same wavelength. So, my friends, Joel also knows that the infinite way isn't for everybody right now. Some people take other steps. It does not matter. He's not trying to say this is what you got to do forever. Whatever you vibrate to, whatever your consciousness feels comfortable with as a spiritual practice, just go with that. And you know, I was surprised 10 years ago when my first book of Joel's hit me over the head, and I had to sit down, and I was just blown away. And then when studying his life and seeing a lot of parallels to my own, well, you know, when something fits you like a glove, there's no turning back. You got it. It's you and your soul faculties. Just keep growing. So remember, middle path students like myself. Be okay with that. Keep growing, keep trying, keep remembering the rules. The rules are, see your brother and sister, family especially, are your teachers as whole, complete, and perfect. Yeah. I mean, think about that. They're all the Son of God. They're all His creation. And let's think about where God is. Now, the Bible goes to law and God saying, you know, God's over there. Joel say, He's not here, He's not there, He's not up in heaven, He's not here on earth. God is omnipresence. He gave all of us a life with His energy within us. So He's not out there somewhere, He's within us. The kingdom of God is within us. So all you have to do is draw on consciousness, the consciousness of perfection, the beauty and the peace of love. Think of how Jesus loved His disciples and people that weren't very nice to Him. He could see who they were on the deepest part of who they couldn't see. He could see who they were. He knew. He was so evolved. And you know, it's interesting about studying spirituality. I know Joel will say 500 years before Jesus even came along, the Hebrew disciples in India were doing spiritual healing. I mean, it's like it's been around a while. People found it in India. The Hebrew prophets found it. So it's not new business. It's just new business for a lot of us who are figuring out we want that. We want to be comfortable. We want to love one another. We want to walk in peace. So remember, middle path, folks, be okay with that. Because I have to be okay with that. And that's why I do this work. This is all coming back to me, my friends. What we do when we cheer somebody on, when we give to anybody, is our souls rejoice because we are this loving entity. We are this loving core. That what goes out becomes us, and what we preach, we learn from. So no matter how you grow in the spiritual plane, whether you write a book, paint a painting, sweep a floor, love your neighbor, helping someone who's not well, it really doesn't have to be very sophisticated, or it can be extremely mundane as long as you know, and you can't miss it. As you're serving, it comes back to you. And what could be nicer than that? So look at your families for information on how you're doing, and look to your neighbor as yourself, and keep plugging. So we meditate and we become quiet, which I chuckle at because, as Joel knows, that's not our favorite word. Let's be quiet. Let's have some time where we are reflective and receptive, because we need this power within us is a receptive instrument. It's there saying my beepers are on. I'm listening. So when you say, "Speak, Lord, your servant heareth," you really are looking for that grace the grace that you are given, and the Christ in you that gives the Christ in anybody else keeps coming up. You become more Christed as you see the Christ in anybody else. So that's how you grow. So remember that spiritual healing, the healing consciousness, we can all work on. But you have to really work hard to make sure you know what you're doing as a healer. Like, don't pretend you can go out if you have not done sufficient work in what your vision is. It requires persistence, quiet, and remember all those phases that you went through in your life where you thought this was it. I've been through so many. They were it. They were perfect. It was this little urging, wonderful seed within you that wanted to burst forth and serve in many, many different ways. So they were all good. They all added to the next one. So just remember that. As we grow and we change, we find God guides every move. You don't know where you're going to live maybe next. You don't know what the next stage of your life is. It's all about surrender to the still, small voice. Can't say that enough. The still, small voice can rock you right out of your shoes. It can give you information you never expected to get, which is why you have to be open. You want liberation. You want freedom. You want grace. You want to be guided, my friends. This is an interesting place to be, and it's kind of an interesting century, because I think Joel actually thinks we're on a roll. We're going to get there. He sees signs that we're really on our way. And I see signs too. And sometimes, even politically, we see sometimes really tough stuff. That actually helps us in many ways have faith that that's not working, or that's not attractive, or that hate, or that not loving one another is really something we don't want to give attention to. I think as we're all spiritually growing, we know we don't want to give attention to anything or anybody who says, let's not love our neighbor as ourselves. So the infinite way is really trying to compare the human life with the mortal life. It's trying to show us the difference and what we can do about it. We meditate, we show up, we look to the prophets. We look to see what they had to say. We see that they believed what Jesus believed. You know, Christ is so interesting. The fact that before he came, the word law and God said, well, you have to believe in this, and you have to love your neighbor, or you can't leave your wife, or this rule book that the Bible sort of has given us about how to live. It's very interesting, and it sort of goes right to human behavior. So Joel wants us to know in the infinite way, in the mystical way of life, we can go better than that. We can go for just love thy neighbor. It's funny how when you evolved, the simplicity of what we have to know becomes even more simple. How simple is that? Love thy neighbor, period. End of story. You're home free. So then you get tested day in and day out. So the truth will keep hitting you, and you'll be tested all day today, all day tomorrow. Every single day you'll be tested. But the more you find your quiet time, the more you find that still small voice, which has a sense of humor, by the way, the more you grow and you change. And the more you walk on water, and by that, don't tell anybody. A big secret. Don't share this wonderful news with just anybody who might look at you and say, okay, and they'll be polite with an awkward grin on their face where you realize maybe I shouldn't have said that, because it's a little out there for folks to think, you know, everybody's divine and perfect. I mean, how many of us are ready to do that? It's hard. So don't go to, don't get a mic and stand up and tell everybody what's going on with the infinite way. Notice your consciousness will attract like minds. You don't have to go find them. You just show up. Yeah, it's interesting. As you show up, people will read your soul. You don't have to open your mouth. People will feel your soul. They'll feel your forgiveness. They'll feel your love. Now let's go to forgiveness. You know, as we judge, as you sow, so shall you reap. Joel says, hey, okay, but that comes back on you where Joel says it's much simpler than that. It's just forgive 70 times 7. Don't, as you sow, so shall you reap. So good for you. It's like just forgive. If you want freedom, if you want inner peace, all you do is forgive everybody. Somebody who may have done you wrong, you really don't want to forgive, but you may wrestle with that for a while, but until you come to the way where you realize how you would feel, that maybe there's really love somewhere in there for what that person really was, even though he's done you wrong, just know that's all Jesus talked about. Get rid of the 9 commandments. Remember, the only one is love thy neighbor. Forgive 70 times 7. Everything. Everything. And see how you feel within. You see, your soul is growing. It's not there yet, but it's growing, and it has a faculty. And I like that. The soul faculty is growing. You are growing up spiritually. So we all have a mission. What is yours? It doesn't have to be super profound. It can be simple. I think in another show, God said, we can be nobodies, but we're all somebody. In the spiritual plane, once we walk on water, once we forgive, what's within us is raising the consciousness of the entire universe. Now, please hear that. Our efforts that are not so little are adding to the whole of this perfect universe that God created. It's right there. So you want to lift consciousness up. You want to contribute, because it rocks mountains. I mean, you're doing great stuff when you do that. Think about it. You're serving God because He made this universe perfect, and you want to honor Him and say, you want to applaud and say, thank you. Yes, it is perfect. I want to support that idea. I want to love my neighbor as myself. So, my friends, that's what we all are here to do. We're raising consciousness because I believe, Joel, it's possible that we will bring heaven to earth. Heaven is on earth. It's not up there, it's not down here. It's in consciousness, it's in our souls. It's not in a rule book. It's heaven. And heaven, isn't that an interesting thing to think that right here on the earth plane, in this human mortal world, we can look at immortality? Because heaven is knowing we're immortal. That's a big one. We started out, we're not going to end, we never began, we live forever. As Joel looked out at his audience and saw someone sick and old and someone well and not so good, he had to really just switch and say, ha-ha, that's not what's real. What's real is everyone is whole, complete, and perfect. And that's taking away age. Well, I'd love that to happen. Take away my age, make me a kid, because I still am. Because souls really are interesting no matter what the body looks like. And he also mentions the body. Look at the body as doing a great job for you. Bless it. Take care of it. It's all part of the plan. God's omnipresence is within you, guiding every inch of your life. Every thought is coming from Him, or the energy is coming from omnipresence. God is not out there, He's not down there, He's not up there, He's not down there. He's within you, and you have the whole kingdom of God within you to draw on that wants to guide you through every inch of your wonderful existence. And remember, my friends, as I'm checking out, you are immortal, you are perfect, you are whole, and you're here with a divine spark that can only grow and grow and grow. And thank you, my friends, for joining me on Awaken the Dream. We'll talk to you again soon.